Hello, my mystical friends. Step inside the Oracle Parlor. Grab a nice cup of tea and get cozy with me, your host, Phantasma Witch. Let us go on a journey of all things magical, mystical, paranormal, ghostly, psychic, as we discuss both my stories as well as the stories of guests where we can share in this beautiful parlor space our experiences, our beliefs, and our ideas without judgment. Welcome. Cozy up. It's time to sip the magical tea. Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Oracle Parlor podcast. Today, I'm so excited because in the parlor, we have a magical, artsy witch with us, and I can't wait for this episode. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Laura Tempest Zakroff. Most folks know me as Laura Tempest or LTZ to make their lives easier. Pronouns are she, they, and I am a modern traditional witch. I am an artist, an author, as well as a performer, primarily dance, but I also do other performance arts as well. And I've been doing this now for over 30 years.
Amazing. I actually first came across your work years ago when I found your book on Sigil Witchery, and I was so incredibly grateful to have had a chance to even take your sigil crafting workshop one time. And it was just such an inspiration because as a fellow artist and as a fellow witch, it was cool getting to see somebody who had this deep passion and love for both art and magic and combine it in this really cool way, which we will talk a little bit more about how you do your sigils. But first, I would love to hear your journey as an artist as well as a witch. Like, how did you get your start? At what point did you decide to don the title of witch?
The art journey started first. I would say that is the earliest moment, though I don't I'd say which is not far behind in that. So my parents sent me off to art school at 3, but they're like, this child's not coordinated. We'll send them to art school. And at the same time, I also had a somewhat unconventional upbringing and background. So my parents are both very much interested in the arts. So we had that, but mythology and just kind of, I grew up with watching like In Search of and the Mysteries of the Unknown series. Love getting those out of the library. Like
Yes.
pouring into that very, very young age, interested in ancient Egypt and all of those things from all around the world. Was really, really fascinated. But it was around high school when I started really thinking about art as magic, and that magic was actually a thing besides, this sort of cool
Yeah.
cool sort of for the weird kids. Well, I got definitely a weird kid, like just embrace it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was around those times where, the only place that was open late was the bookstores. So, and, in high school, we're hanging out at, the local bookstore and coffee shop. And that's where we discovered, Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler. So
Mm.
the initial, like most of the books that people got into in the 90s, I was like, these all look fake. So somebody's gonna be like, no, how dare you? But I was also a very analytical kid, and very academic as well. So I had like this balance of art and being a skeptic, being reasonable, and like
Mm.
here's history, here's science. What's the actual facts behind this? And finding Margot's approach as an NPR reporter, and like, oh. There's a history, there's a context. This is not just fiction. It's not just something that's in the Mists of Avalon or
Yeah, yeah.
on TV. And through that, I found other folks. So I went off to college and made connections, and eventually ended up starting my own pagan group at my college because I was like, this don't work, but if I make my own, if you build it, they will come, and they did.
That's amazing. So, did you go to college for art then?
Yes, I went to the Rhode Island School of Design and majored in the strange major of printmaking, because I couldn't decide if I wanted to be like in fine art or design, like do
Mm-hmm.
illustration, which is a very, very focused department. And I knew like there's the painters who are sort of there for years. Like there's like it's not really a 4-year program. It's sort of,
Yeah.
you know, amorphous. So I thought printmaking would be at least a technique that I could apply to processes. By the time I graduated, I knew I didn't want to do printmaking for anybody else because I get bored of printing more than 10 of my own pieces. But it's true. I definitely use a lot of the approaches and a lot of the artists that you study in printmaking. Most artists did explore printmaking at some time. A lot of the big famous artists they
hmm
went into that, so it's like a great way to discover a wider range of disciplines and approaches. So
Yeah, yeah. I went to school for illustration because I love visual storytelling, but it was definitely more of a gateway than it actually was the literal thing that I ended up doing. So I
right.
totally feel that. But yeah, as you know, as a fellow artist in which it was really refreshing to read your book on sigil magic because it's so obviously written by somebody who is an artist, who understands art and the history of art because your book starts with literally art history. And I was so thrilled because I was like, oh, this was like my favorite subject in community college was art history, which is what really got me to finally take the plunge into being an artist. And so, for anybody out there who doesn't maybe know a little bit about sigil magic, if you've ever really read a lot of common books that are out there on sigils, it's very mathematical almost on the approach to creating sigils. And that's why it was so refreshing to read your book, where it was like, oh my gosh, wait, this was the first time someone was telling me, no, 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 honey, you don't have to do it that way. You can be creative. You can take inspiration and use symbolism. And so I'm kind of curious, like, how did you start developing your creation of your own personal sigils because they're so different, but they also just make so much sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
It definitely does. And so I said, early on, I was really interested in ancient Egypt, and there was a point where I was like being able to, I can't do it anymore, but like knew hieroglyphics and be able to read, them a little bit, and
Yes.
that kind of nerdiness, but was also drawn to similar shapes. My father had made dioramas of cave paintings and drawings, so I kind of grew up with those images in there. And I visited the Southwest a lot where my great aunt was. And so kind of being exposed to indigenous pottery and weaving
Mm,
and, everything from around the world. Like if you look at it, like it's all patterns, right? There's patterns and shapes and symbols. You can go to any continent, you're going to find these remnants and these bits and pieces and how humans decipher the world around us. And there's so many commonalities of that. So in my own art, I was taking those lines and shapes and, very smoothly, like I love telling stories. And sometimes it's just, I'm telling the story to myself. Like it's not
yeah.
necessarily for anybody else, but like, especially as a kid and the youngest child of, having much older brothers, I, had a lot of time. There was a lot of time to myself. So, I was creating these stories and as I was doing the line work, there was meaning to this line, like
Mm,
this placement here interacts with this one. And then over time I was realizing that I was building up these magical symbols because they were encompassing more than just the marks. It was the story of those marks.
mm.
And when I was teaching visual alchemy at an event in Portland, Oregon years ago, someone was like, "What are all these little squiggles in your work?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess they're sigils, because this is what I do to express the magic and the energy of the art." And I'm like, "How it's cool. How do you do it?" And I think like when you've been doing something for decades,
hmm
inside your head, it's like, let me think about that. How did I do this? Let me go back and deconstruct
Yeah.
this approach. And that's how Sigil Witchery came into being, is deconstructing it for other people in order for them to do it.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love how you describe it as like being that these sigils in themselves are a story that's being told. I think one of the ones that really stood out to me back when I got your book and read it for the first time was you were there was a section where you were talking essentially about how something as simple as a dot could represent a seed. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, like it just, again, it just makes so much sense to symbolically use these things that as a society, specifically like in Western society, we've all come to this like silent agreement of like, yeah, this obviously would represent this. Like, I think the most common thing people would know is like a heart being love.
Right.
Very easy. But I remember in your book, you even had talked about, cool, but what if we open the top of the heart? And then that's like
Mhm.
heart opening. And I was like, these simple little ways of taking symbolism that we already have internally and internalized in some way and then combining them with different symbols like you said to create a story and then imbue that story, that sigil, with magic, with purpose, um, which I think is just absolutely incredible. So, other than sigils, I'm curious, what ways do you blend art and magic? Because it kind of sounds like you started with the art first and then
Mhm.
developed this, sigil witchery. But it sounds like you were already putting a lot of magic into your art pieces. And if you wouldn't also mind sharing, what medium do you work in for people who may not know or may not have seen your work?
Sure. So we'll start with the medium. So I primarily do mixed media, which tends to be traditional media, pen, paper, ink, acrylic. It tends to be most of the things I'm doing is acrylic on wood. But I also do watercolor, pastels, colored pencils, like all of the media. I haven't met I haven't met a media I haven't liked. I mean, there are a few. You get a little too messy in there, but from sculpture to 2D, 3D, but primarily right now is usually some combination of painting and drawing, which is what most of my oracles that are out there are a combination, either acrylic, ink, or watercolor. So that's what I do. I get my hands into those things, which
Yes.
also taps into the printmaking process of think about the quality of the line and the layers of depth that are created in there too.
Hmm.
Sometimes reduction and addition into those processes. But the point of magic, so the symbols and the line work. My drawing style is very linear and very energetic. I'm not one of those people who make a very precise, clean line. Like I did coloring books 10 years ago now, and like it was such it came out in my own style, but it was as much of a struggle because I'm like, oh, people are expecting these very clean, open spaces, and that's not how I draw. I often, if I'm going to do a line, I'm doing a few lines, and
Yeah,
so not only am I finding what the perfect line is in there, but the multiple marks create an energy to it. So like when you create
absolutely.
a yeah, we create a circle and you get multiple things, and then people notice, like as someone who does dance and movement work, they're like, well, it's like your drawings are moving like the way you do dance.
Hmm.
So there's another part of interwoven you know discipline in there of the line has emotion, the shape has emotion, but you can also dance that, and then the conversation that's happening in the art or in the painting or in the dance all comes together.
Hmm.
So I find that all of those are interconnected. But when thinking about, in the idea of telling the stories, it's not just those, specific clarified sigils, which when you think about spells, right, our traditional sympathetic magic is a collection of ingredients, right? You take
Hmm.
this color candle and this tool and this oil and this crystal, whatever the stuff, you take
Yeah.
the magical stuff, right? And those ideally are helping us create a visualization of what is it that we want to accomplish, that we choose
Hmm.
this color candle because it connects to that outcome we want. We choose this herb because it's supposed to assist. We might work with this deity or spirit because they aid in that particular area, right? The
Yeah.
same thing is happening in a sigil. But I also like to play games with regular, regular paintings and portraits, and like taking 3D stuff and making it very 2D. It's like, how do I make a 2D spell, a painting
Mm.
of a spell, right? I really do like to play a lot of games. I have to amuse myself.
I think that's one of the like best ways to get into that magical feeling, though, is to have that childlike fun and wonder and curiosity. And yeah, as kids, we may have had coloring books, but how often when we were little did we actually color inside the lines? Like, no. And how often
So,
were we picking correct colors? Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
no, the dog is going to be purple, thank you.
Yes. That's how it's
Yes.
supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. And if that purple kind of, shoots off and they have a horn, well, then fantastic. It's just that much more magical, right?
Yes.
But yeah, your art, the way that you're describing it as like having movement, that's exactly how I was going to describe it, was that when I look at your pieces, looking at your art, it feels like it's alive. It has that energy of motion to it, even though we're looking at a still image, which is very difficult to do in art. And it's not just the way that you use the lines and the quality of line and the color, but it's also, it feels almost like the intention that you pour into the piece as
Mhm.
well. And it kind of resonates on this other level energetically as, okay, visually, my eyes can see the movement, but I can also feel it. You know
Right.
what I mean? Which I think is really special because, like I said, that's not an easy thing to do.
Years and years of playing with it, right? And just, especially when you're dealing with deities and spirits, right?
Hmm.
It's really important for me, especially if I'm doing it for someone that I'm working with or commissioned for somebody else, is here's this thing that is becoming a representation, a gateway or crossroads for connecting with that entity. And it needs to be more than just this flat,
Yes, it
right?
kind of becomes like a portal almost in
Yes.
some respect. So that's so
Exactly.
cool.
I like to call it considered doorways, right? So,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
creating an image, which is a doorway, and there might be a sigil or some other connection to it that becomes the key, or
Mm.
the interaction between the painting as a doorway and the viewer as the key, right? If you are meant to connect with that particular image, then you can unlock the door. If you're just like, it's pretty, that's fine. Like, it's like it may is
Yeah.
not meant for you. They're not talking to you. That's fine. you know it's probably better for certain entities you don't want to connect with, but the connection, the power and that intent to be able
Mhm.
to do that, I think it's really really important to honor both the spirit or the entity or the deity and the person seeking that relationship.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. And I can absolutely see that being used as a really amazing way for people to put your art on their altar and then connect in this deeper way, in this really cool doorway aspect that you're talking about. I love that so much. That's really cool.
It's,
Um,
it's it's always an honor when someone's like, your art's on my altar. I'm like, oh.
sobbing. Yeah. So I'm curious, when you're actually in the act of creating art, do you have rituals that you do before or after when you're creating these visual doorways?
Most of the time I feel like this is my temple. Like right now we are in my studio. I'm at my desk where this is where the magic happens. This is where the art happens. And it tends to be like, because this is already established sacred space, I've already
Mm,
done things, it is entering the temple. But there is the preparation, right, of
yeah.
pouring out the paint or preparing the surface. And most of the time I'm being led by a particular idea or a vision,
Hmm.
so it's just that chase
Yeah.
or journey or hijacking, whatever you want to consider it is. But on occasion, I might be working with someone else's deity or spirit entity, like as a commission that I might not personally work with, but I need to connect with their vision of it.
Hmm.
And so that might require, you know, bringing up, printing out like what their story and their connection, what images they connect with, maybe creating an altar that again connects to their practice, because it also needs to be a respectful conversation. Uh, and I haven't really run into anything on that realm that's like, no. Most of them are like, oh yes, please, I would like a picture. And it goes across the spectrum. I think it's a sort of a thing, is there's that representation. I have done things where it's like, no, don't include the name, but yes, you're on there. But most of the time it looks just like making art. It doesn't, like, gotta There's a
Yeah.
podcast on, maybe there's
Yeah.
some incense. I've got tea going on. Keep the tea separate from the paint water.
Oh
Um,
gosh, yeah. I
doesn't
think,
always work.
yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think we've all been pretty close to that before. If you're an artist and dangerous.
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that it doesn't have to be anything above and beyond. It can be that same casual atmosphere of just like, I'm having a good time and I'm making art and I'm listening to a podcast. I love that. I've mentioned before on the podcast, for anyone who's listened to a previous episode where I had Terry, who also works in animation, where when I worked in animation, as a visual development artist, sometimes I'd be asked to create things with nothing more than a simple sentence, and I would struggle. And those were the times I would go to my altar, I'd light incense, and I'd be like, okay, I need the muses to really inspire me because this one line I was given has no inspiration. And then it was always, I found, easier to kind of like tap in when having almost like that energy behind it, that
Mhm.
connection to something outside of myself. And I'm curious because, again, I talked about this on the podcast before with other artists, but it's my favorite topic, so I have to ask. I feel like when I am creating, not all the time, like when it was for work and animation, it was more mechanical. It was more thinking about how is this going to work? How is this going to look when it moves and things like that. But when I'm just sketching for fun, even if it's something as silly as fan art, like I'm drawing Chapel Roan because I just really jam out to the music and I just really want to draw, Chapel in that one amazing armor outfit that she wore. Um, but I feel like sometimes when I'm creating art, it can be similar to being in a magical space or mindset where you kind of like lose yourself. You kind of end up in this liminal space where time just seems to fly by and you don't even recognize that, oh my gosh, 3 hours have gone by and I have a whole page of sketches or, whatever.
Yeah.
And, I really believe that when we are in a creative flow state, it's very similar to tapping into our intuition and tapping into our magic. And I'm curious if you have any personal experiences that are similar to that.
It's definitely a trance state. There are multiple levels of brainwave states that we enter for trance. Like people tend to think that trance is like, I have a veil over my head. I mean, I do that. Yeah.
You're like, don't get it twisted, both. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
totally do that, or kind of shifting out of your body, etc. But the creative process is also kind of entering in a particular state, different brainwave state, and
Yeah.
especially if you've created a practice. Right, this is people freak out like, oh, I don't know how to draw. I'm like, there's a practice to it. Everything you've learned that you do start it with practice and doing repetition. So
Mhm.
when you set out those pens, when you open up that sketchbook, when you smell the charcoal, whatever it is,
Mm.
those are all signals, especially if you've been doing it for a while, that your brain goes, oh yes, we're going to the happy place. Or hopefully the happy place, because brains can be assholes and be like,
Yeah.
eh, you
Yeah,
know
exactly.
we all kind of, there's always part where you hate the thing before it becomes like,
Yes.
oh, it worked. Right? So that's saying it's a perfect, beautiful, glorious state. But in many times, yeah, it's a comforting state. And we often talk about as artists that we have to make art. Like it's not just I just want to make pictures. Like it's a need to tell those stories and to be in that state and connect with those parts of ourselves and expression.
Yeah.
Um, and whether it's a so deep kind of trance state that hours and hours pass, or it's that light sort of lighter trance, like we're driving, right? Like
Yes.
trance happens when you're driving.
Hmm.
Which is
Hmm.
very, it's worrisome, but like
Yeah.
I think almost anybody has gone like, wait, how did I get here?
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you got like some good music or a podcast on, it's just like, oh wait, where am I? How did this happen?
Yeah, like time flies when you're having that connection. So just people just tend to think that trance is this, oh, we've got to go, take datura and ride the hedge, and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
bless your heart, but no, you don't need
It
to
can be
do
as
that.
simple as just enjoying the thing that you're in the middle of doing.
Yeah, brains
Absolutely.
brains like to trance, like you don't really
Yeah, yeah.
don't have to, it doesn't have to be such hard work, and it doesn't have to be a chemical thing in order to get to do it. It's a matter of just find the combination of elements
Yes.
that you need to be like, happy place draw.
Yes, yes. Exactly. Oh, I love that. And, one of the things that I really appreciate about your sigil witchery is that during classes, you will ask everybody, like, okay, like, what is a sigil that we should create today? And I don't remember which one we had created, but I noticed that like you often will share these after the fact as well, because usually whatever the group ends up picking has something to do with what's happening currently.
Mhm.
And you had created recently a sigil for protection for uh, protesters and protection for those who were being targeted by ICE, which was something that I had used in a recent TikTok that I made in regards to, let's do a No Kings spell for No Kings Day. And I was curious if you could talk a little bit about, your personal, because I know like when you're working with a group of people, the difference between like working with a group who, everybody has this collective consciousness and collective like intention setting. But when you come to creating these sigils that really have to do with the moment, the movement, you know, um, witchcraft as a form of rebellion through art, because art and witchcraft is very political. And I'm
Yes.
curious if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the ICE sigil or sigil to protect protesters was created in 2017 or 18. So
Oh, okay.
it's been around the block. And actually it was created in, I feel like everything happens in Portland, Oregon. It's not true, not true, but it just definitely seems some pertinent things happen there. So it was created at a shop in Portland. And that's actually a quarter mile from where the shop was where the very first ICE protests were taking place, like the first ones in the country. So someone that night brought the sigil to the
Mm,
protesters. So it was a very much, here's what's happening
yes.
within a mile of what we're, where we're at and setting that in motion. So, that's an amazing thing. And I consider these, as you said, most of them, I do tend to share because they connect to these larger moments.
Yeah.
And I feel that the collaborative process, I mean, I'm often to leading it depending on how much time I have to be like, and we're going to do this, but there's still everybody present for that energy to get it out there so that more people can use it. And considering that now this has been around for 7 or 8 years, it has a potency to it. Like the more people use and connect to something, I feel like the more power it has.
Hmm.
And having that spell, having that sigil for folks to work with, it helps to focus, and especially what's most important is, I share all of these sigils with this is what we put into it. You're going to see the whiteboard of how we
Yeah.
came to this, because so many sigils you see online and someone's like, that's sigils for love.
Yeah.
What kind of love, right?
Yeah.
Like, what does
Yeah.
that mean? How did you arrive at this? What is the intent? That's why it's, for the most part, I say like folks should make their own sigils. But in
Yeah.
this case, with the shared magic sigils, you can see everything that we thought about that went into it so that you can agree with that or be like, nope, I'm going to go make my own thing, or maybe I'm going to build
Hmm.
upon this, which is totally fine as well. And I think that's also really key for, so many of these classes where I'm doing them at, a metaphysical shop or doing them virtually online, is you have a whole collection of people who often don't have a relationship to the other people in the class. It's different
Yeah.
than, a specific coven or group.
Hmm.
So you have these people who don't know each other, but if you can connect them in that moment of like, here is an important moment in time
Yeah.
that we can do something about, or we can at least aid in some way. Like a sigil is not going to easily fix.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people are like, you should make a sigil for that. I'm like, that's about 20 sigils.
Yeah.
you know? Like there's so much going on there. Here's one thing, like what part of this can you actually do within your sphere of influence?
Yeah.
uh, and so being able to, with the ice sigil, mark places with it for people to put it on their body, put it on their signs. There is that, it's the simple thing of protecting those people and amplifying a message of justice.
Yes.
Like it's not going to solve all of those problems, but it does an extra layer of
Yes.
protection and amplification for what's needed. Again, it can't solve all the problems, but we do use this to connect to the mundane things that we can do in our world, that we
Mhm.
can influence.
Exactly. I always tell people in classes, on my podcast, that, with the magical working comes the mundane working. You can't just do a spell for a job and then not put a resume together. Like it doesn't work that way, The spell empowers the resume. The spell empowers your interview, you know? They go hand in hand. And I
Yes.
think one of the great things about sigils, especially being used in this way, is, art in general. It changes our brain chemistry. It changes our emotions. It changes our state of mind. And so when we create a sigil with intention, with collective intention and collective focus and energy, when that sigil is being viewed, even if that person doesn't know what the intentions are specifically, that energy still radiates from the intention of the art piece itself, and therefore will radiate within the person and then alter the energy or the brain chemistry of the people who are seeing and witnessing it, just like any piece of art. And I think
Absolutely.
that's what makes sigils so freaking cool, is because you're combining the visual storytelling aspects of art, the, altering of our perception when it comes to art, and then blending that with this energetic manifestation and magical working. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. And, I know you mentioned a little bit, of how people use sigils, but what are some ways that you typically would recommend people? Because some people here may be like, okay, I kind of have an understanding that a sigil can be a piece of art, but then what the heck do I do with it? So,
It depends on the sigil, and
mhm.
where you want your desired result. And for most of the social justice and kind of protection things, like the easiest thing you can do is put it on a candle, right? May incorporate into your ritual practice, put it on your altar. But there are sigils for like good health. So, March 2020, it created the sigil, that's basically used that say good health. Like right now, it has a few different names. Um, and it was basically used for protection and good health. And I still know people who are working in hospitals who still draw that sigil onto them every single day. Like they anoint themselves. Some people have gotten it tattooed. I think a lot of folks though were like, at some point one day I won't have to draw this on myself anymore because we will have eradicated this illness. Maybe.
Yes.
Current timeline, that's a little
I
murky.
know.
But people who have sworn by that, it has protected them. People have put it, into their storefronts. I still see it and come into a metaphysical shop and it's on their altar.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, it's just like, oh, look at this. I have never been here before, and there's that sigil.
Amazing.
So it's like that's for the body, right? So
Yeah.
putting it on the body, or putting it in a place where where people are interacting, where there might be more germs, like it helps in that way. But there are ones of protection that people can bathe with every day.
Hmm.
You might be putting them on your doors and
Yeah.
windows as wards, around there, putting it like on pennies around the property. um,
Oh, I like that.
yeah, so, just kind of sink it in there and put little bits of copper in there. It's
Yes.
that combination. Like not so much copper now, it's a thin veneer, but we'll just go with the idea.
Yeah, yeah.
The
The
intent, right?
intention. Yeah, exactly.
And there are people who do devotional sigils, and they use those devotional sigils to open that doorway, or they put it on their bodies, in a gesture of devotion and connection to that particular deity or spirit. And there's so many different things, like pretty much anything that you can think of, you can do with a sigil.
Yeah.
You can dance him.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And that's actually what's going to be my next question is, we've discussed a lot of visual art because I mean, I'm a visual artist. But I know that you are also an artist when it comes to movement, to physical movement. And I know you're actually a belly dancer and have created the ritual workout. And so I'm curious, do you incorporate magic with movement and movement with magic? And how do you blend the two?
I found very early on, so they mentioned the Pagan Society that found it back at RISD. And about those times was when I was discovering belly dance, and a whole bunch of us went to a class, and they were like, oh, what if we brought in movement into our rituals? And instantly we're like, wow, this changes everything. Being able to
Mm.
really move instead of focusing on the words and big gestures or robes and things, setting a soundtrack to it, setting a sense of, what is the story that's being told here through movement and
Mm.
connection, and particularly ecstatic movement. It really alters the ritual experience. And one of my favorite things to do, I'm not so much involved with the belly dance community for a lot of
Reasons.
a lot of reasons. But I love teaching movement to magical practitioners, because it's very easy to get folks into their body, connect with their bodies, and then
Yeah.
realize that you can use this for ritual. You can use it for connecting to the divine, to yourself, to each other, in ways that are much faster and even more potent than sometimes when people are like, I'm going to read this really long invocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, here is a poem to pen that's 3 hours long. Or you could just be like, all right, let's get some goaty goat energy on and like get moving in there. Like, boom, you get instant pan. It's like you can have the horn god there in an instant. If you know how to shake your butt.
I love it. That's amazing. That's so funny because, like, when I was first starting my very magical witchy workings, took things a lot more seriously. I was a lot more like rigid with how I did things. But now I've like, again, like being playful, having fun, even if you feel silly, even if you don't know how to, dance, and even if you don't know how to draw, sigils are still a great entryway of like, screw it, I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna have fun with it. I'm gonna dip my fingers in paint and I'm gonna finger paint. I'm gonna, dance around and shake my butt and like no one's watching because who cares? Like this is about altering again your perception, your energy, and movement can do that, especially to the right music. Like it can be anything that you want to listen to, I feel like. Anything that raises your energy and puts you in the headspace that aligns with that intention.
Absolutely. I like to say that I just finished writing whatever number book I'm on. It's very hard when you have multiple projects going at the same time. But I feel like I have this trifecta of things that are scared of that I make people face. One is art, right? People are
Hmm.
afraid of making art,
Hmm.
because it's not going to be good enough. It's not going to,
Yeah.
all those things that society says. People are afraid of dance.
Yeah.
Again, because, oh, my body doesn't do this, or it's not going to look pretty, or, look
Yeah.
stupid, those fears. And then math. We're like, no, not math. I'm like, no, math is fun. That can be fun, especially when you combine it with art. And they all interweave, right? There's
Yeah.
patterns, and
Yeah.
geometry plays a role in this, and the shapes that we make, and the energy, all these things. I'm like, they all come together if you just let yourself experiment.
Yeah. Just have fun with it and see what happens. See what vibes, what doesn't, and absolutely. Yeah, and for anybody who's curious, especially when it comes to movement, because I myself have a chronic illness with chronic pain. So like obviously movement is not always easy for me, but even just simple, like if I am in the middle of spell work, I will still try to incorporate movement with my hands when I'm doing energy work in some way. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast before, but for anyone here who's seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, I don't know if you have, but it's an animated show from Nickelodeon. And in it, for anyone who doesn't know, there are different elements: earth, air, fire, water. And people in this world can, quote unquote, bend the elements, but it's all done through movement of the body in different ways. And they're all based on like Tai Chi and different, art forms of fighting styles. And that is actually what I do when I do movement with my spell work because that show meant a lot to me growing up. It
Mhm.
obviously means a lot to me as someone who worked in animation, But also now, whenever I do any kind of energy work, whenever I'm setting the space, I will almost visualize it like I'm moving the energy, like I'm moving like the water element or the air element from this show. And I will move my arms and my hands. So even if I'm not doing full on dancing, which I have done, close the door, put on my music, tell my partner not to come in. But even if it's just like simple like hand gestures, even when I'm charging a candle, I will allow my body to just, I don't think about it. I'm just like, hey, like moving in this direction, pulling in this way, holding my hand in this way, and I'll just kind of instinctively go with it. And I'm no dancer. Like I've never taken any kind of dancing classes, but I'm curious when you're moving with intention magically, is that something that you just sort of allow your body to flow with it, or do you plan it?
A combination thereof. Like when I'm teaching folks, I have to give them examples.
Yeah,
So one of the things I do is teach body casting, is what I call it, which is how to cast a circle without the words,
amazing.
right? And using the elements, right? It's like, okay, well, how do you connect with air, right? And it could be that sort of gesture, right, from the show that
Mhm.
you've seen, or is it just taking a breath? Because it's
Yes.
also really important for me for movement to be accessible. So if somebody, can't move their legs or they can only control their breath,
Yeah.
you can't, that's still movement. To me, that's still dance. It doesn't have to be, I have to move my, all the limbs. Right? Because at some point, bodies are going to body,
Yeah. Bodies
right?
be wildin'. That's how what they
Yes,
do.
they're doing the thing. So, having those examples for people to see the connection, how they visualize an element, how that might feel in their body. But when I am doing ritual like the Hecate at the Crossroads ritual, which often is a large gathering, anywhere from 30 to 40 people in a small thing to like 200 people at a big festival, it's a very much what's happening, right?
Mhm.
Because every time we do that ritual, it's different. And it's different because the people are different, the location is different, the need is different, the
Yeah.
message is different. So there's only the framework, the anchors, right? Of we have a vague idea of what we want to have happen, but everything that's going to happen in that, what I say and how I move, is dependent on listening to the moment. Um,
Yes.
Feeling the people around. So, some things are going to be really slow and very, very, lower kind of trance-like. And sometimes it's going to be really wild and ecstatic, kind of crazy people screaming like wolves at the top of their lungs, or sometimes
Yes.
both. Sometimes both, because both is fun.
Yeah.
But it's not planned. It's not a choreography. And even
Mhm.
in my performance, very rarely in the years I've been dancing have I done a choreography. My brain isn't built for it, and I rather be in the moment, be in my body, be there communicating with the audience and the music at the same time.
Yes, I love that. It almost has like a bit of like somatic element to it where you're
Mhm.
just allowing your body to move with flow and do what it needs to do, but still having this like base understanding and instinct of like, well, this is kind of the direction I want to go, but let's see what happens.
Right. And when, it's building up a practice, right?
Yeah.
So, having studied all these different types of folkloric dance and traditional
Hmm.
forms from around the world, is how many different ways can our arms move? How many different ways can our
Hmm.
chest move? Circles in the body, all of those things, you get a familiarity with them. And once you have built that vocabulary, then you just let it go.
Yeah.
Right? And especially just like the sigils, like what does a circle mean, right? What does it mean for me to
Hmm.
circle my chest, make a big circle, or circle my hips, or draw it with my toe on the floor? Each of those have a different meaning. And so tapping into the unconscious or subconscious parts of ourselves, allowing that to tell the story, right? Of
Yes.
what we're pulling together, what we're conjuring with movement.
Yes. I mean, a lot of ancient practices of dance, like I can't speak to a lot of them, but in Italian folk traditions, and I'm gonna butcher this. I am so sorry, people out there who are listening and know Italian. There is a dance that essentially the translation is like the dance of the tarantula
The
dance, but it's
tarantula or
thank you.
tarantella.
Yes, yes. So you know it. It's
Mhm.
it's done with purpose and intent and to tell a story to have a purpose for an outcome of what the dance is. And so this is something that I feel like all cultures all around the world use dance. I mean, even today, we look at like modern day plays. Even if there's no singing, like a ballet, those are movements that are telling and depicting to an audience a visual storytelling that is taking place.
Mhm.
Just the music, just the movement, even without music, and you still can tell what is happening because, our body language and body movement, no matter how big or small or minimal, whatever that may look like, you can use that to tell a story. Like being someone who worked in animation as a character designer specifically, I was always thinking about how can I tell the story through this pose? How
Mhm.
can I push, even if I'm giving somebody, if somebody else gives me storyboards for anybody who understands this lingo, but even if I receive somebody else's drawing, and I know what's happening in the story, I go, okay, well, I know that this is the base of what it needs to look like, but how can I push that to tell the story even further? How can I make sure that the expression, the pose, the way that they're holding themselves is telling us something deeper of what's happening inside this person's thought process and their feelings? And dance sounds very much like that in that way.
It's those little things, right? The way an eyebrow is, the way
Yes.
is the head tilted up, is it down, where the shoulders are. Like there's so many different things. And you may be like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I'm like, I bet you could though. I bet you can tell from somebody's body language, are they
Yes.
happy or are they sad? And as someone who's neurospicy, like I can still,
Yes.
you know, I might not always get the language parts right, but the body parts are something that I'm paying attention to. And it's like our
Yes.
gut picks up on that too. Even if, again, we're not consciously thinking it here, we're feeling it.
Exactly. And I want to take a quick moment to say, for anybody who maybe struggles with aphantasia, one of the reasons why I love Laura's version of using sigils is because even though, yes, it may be more creative in how it's done, and it's not simply using letters and rearranging letters, but it's more imagery, it's still taking the time beforehand to ask yourself, what is the intention? What is the purpose? Seeing your whiteboard photos of when you've built these sigils, they're bullet pointed out. So there's still that aspect of even before getting to the visualization of it, you don't have to go flying without any kind of like direction and just be like, I have to be able to see it in my mind's eye before I put it on paper. Because that's
Right.
not always the case. Like with art in general, especially like with sigils, it's like, no, no, what do you want to say? What do you want the intention? What do you want the outcome to be? And even if, like we're saying, you don't have to be a professional dancer, you don't have to be a professional artist in order to get into the mindset and get into the energy of play to create this magical intention through movements. And I absolutely love that you were talking about like moving your hips in a circle to like draw the circle. And I'm like, what? I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do that. Amazing. So, Laura, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I feel like I could just keep talking forever about art and magic. But I'm sure there are listeners here who are just dying to go look at your art and to learn more about you. So, where can our listeners find you?
Well, I have a website that's lauratempestzakroff.com. So that's kind of the hub of all the things, and it gets you to my social media. Though I think the most people can find me easily is on Instagram. It's alchemy.arts, but it's a pun. So alchemy is OWLKEYME dot arts. I have people like know me for years who are just like, damn it,
I'm going
that's
to be
what
honest,
it
I didn't realize it till you said it. And I was like, oh, that's so smart.
I like owls. I like keys. That's
Yeah.
me.
Oh, I love that.
Because yeah, I'm a dork. I really, very, very serious about the things. At the same time, I am an absolute dork. So you can go there, and that will have my link tree as well, so folks can find me there. I think I'm LTZ Witch on YouTube, which is where you can check out the Witchwul workout, which is spelled WITCHUAL, and my 6 minutes of witchcraft and other ramblings that I put on there too. So there's a lot of me if you really if you want more of this.
Amazing. And for anyone who maybe this is their first time listening, you can find me, Phantasma Witch, TikTok, Instagram. My website is also Phantasma Witch. Make sure if you enjoy this episode, let us know in the comments, leave a review. It really helps us out. And absolutely go check out Laura's work. Go give Laura a follow. And hopefully we will see you, Laura, maybe next time in the parlor. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining me on this magical, mystical journey within the Oracle Parlor. It has been such a pleasure to have you, and please, if you have questions or a spooky story that you would like to share with the podcast, email oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. If you would like to learn more from me, Phantasma Witch, head over to my Patreon. There are free memberships as well as paid memberships where you can get access to monthly magical workshops, Q&A, behind the scenes, and so much more. Don't forget, you can also book a reading directly with me, whether that's tarot, palm reading, pet communication, or even mystical intuitive consultations. You can find all that and more on my website, phantasmawitch.com. That's Phantasmawitch.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Phantasma Witch, as well as TikTok at Phantasma Witch. And if you aren't listening to this on YouTube, you can also find me there at Phantasma Witch. If you enjoyed the podcast, please, please, please make sure you leave a rating, share it with people you know. It really helps out. Thank you again, and I will see you witches in the next episode.